Well, let's return to Brexit again for a moment. Theresa May is still facing an uphill battle to break the deadlock on Brexit after the EU once again told her they would not reopen the withdrawal agreement. So what now? For more on this, I'm joined by public affairs consultant Alex Deane, who's a former advisor to David Cameron, and Scarlett Maguire, former advisor to the Labour Party. Hello to you both. So,
hi, Sarah.
In diplomatic speak, a robust meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker for the Prime Minister this morning. No reopening of the withdrawal agreement. Potentially a slight shift in tone from Guy Verhofstadt, though, Alex, suggesting there may be some room to negotiate on the political declaration.
And we are getting signals like this, I think, quite often, along with some, to use your phrase, robust speech from Donald Tusk, which upset quite a few people yesterday. We also get examples of people like Martin Selmayr coming over to the UK and giving evidence in the UK Parliament and saying, well, if we did this on the political declaration, then could you vote for the deal? Or if we did that on the declaration, could you then vote for the deal? So there's clearly some appetite for movement, and they are playing, in some ways, an old-fashioned game of good cop, bad cop. Some of the people on the European side are being a bit more flexible in their response to the UK, and some, quite ostentatiously, being very inflexible.
Does any of this matter in Westminster, though, Scarlett? Because if the withdrawal agreement can't be reopened and the backstop remains, that's not going to cut it, is it?
Well, I mean, I think what Jeremy Corbyn has done is he's called Theresa May's bluff. He's said, if you're serious that you want to get something through Parliament, actually we could give you a deal. If you go for a customs union, which isn't so far off what you want, what you've been talking about, we'll live with the Irish backstop. And there is a serious question about, in that case, whether the Europeans would reopen negotiations. And I think now Theresa May has got she's got to think about whether, once again, she's going to put her party first, or whether she's actually looking for a deal that could unite Parliament, or a great deal of Parliament. And it's up to her. And the Europeans, knowing that Jeremy Corbyn has made this offer, are going to be saying, well, you know, who do we really listen to?
Alex, how much pressure has Jeremy Corbyn put the Prime Minister under with this letter?
Well, it's clear that partners and friends in the European Union have been listening very carefully to voices in and around Westminster, not just the negotiating team they're talking to. And it is right to say that they have been listening closely to what the leader of the opposition has been saying. And indeed, they had, before he made his announcement last night, they had criticised Jeremy Corbyn in the same breath that they'd criticised the Prime Minister in their responses previously after our series of amendments in the House of Commons. But it's also true that they've been listening and talking to John Major, Tony Blair, people who've been making noises off in and around Lord Adonis and so forth, people who've been making noises off in a way that might be characterised as unhelpful towards our negotiating team. It is true that this makes it more difficult for the Prime Minister when she goes to Brussels. On the other hand, if the Labour Party is serious about coming to the House of Commons and, rather than just opposing for opposition's sake, trying genuinely to get to a point where the House of Commons can agree on a deal, then that is a double-edged sword. It's both helpful for the Prime Minister in negotiating and also puts more pressure on her to reach a resolution.
Where does this leave her, Alex, on her red line over the customs union?
Oh, I think that she did very well in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, and both the speech and the conversations that she had there. I think that the withdrawal agreement, I mean, the main thing about the Brady Amendment is that the House of Commons agreed to the whole of the withdrawal agreement except for the backstop. If we can take the backstop to one side and preserve that red line about the customs union with an agreement that, should we ever get to having the backstop being enacted, then it'll be dealt with in a way other than currently set out in the withdrawal agreement. That does both things, right? It preserves a majority of will in the House of Commons, and it lets the Prime Minister keep her red line. It's very difficult to see her proceeding if she can't do both those things.
But the customs union is one of those key demands from Jeremy Corbyn, isn't it, Scarlett?
Oh, it's absolutely, and actually, I mean, if you listen to people in Northern Ireland, I mean, they're not playing around on this backstop. They are absolutely horrified that Theresa May was actually risking everything to try and get a deal with the DUP when Northern Ireland voted Remain, and they are the people, you know, who we are reminded over and over again who will suffer the most if this all goes wrong. So there is no question that Jeremy Corbyn has said, we do a customs union and then we will support you. And the Europeans are listening to this.
But Labour, you say Northern Ireland voted Remain. Scarlett, sorry to interrupt you, but Labour voters predominantly voted Remain. And if Jeremy Corbyn gets a Tory Brexit through, supports Theresa May to deliver Brexit, how's that going to be received?
Jeremy Corbyn has a problem, right? That you're absolutely right, that the membership of the Labour Party are basically Remainers, and people who voted Labour are mostly Remainers. And he I mean, and that's why he's being so tough, is that actually if she doesn't take this deal, which preserves most of the good things about being in the European Union without giving us a voice, I mean, you know, I don't agree with it, but I understand that it's about compromise. But if she doesn't take this, then we are back to saying we've got to have another referendum so that we can actually have a proper conversation about where all this is leaving us. And Keir Starmer and his team have made it absolutely plain today. She either accepts it or they're going for a second referendum.
Alex, I can see you shaking your head there.
Well, I mean, the divide is quite clear, I think, between Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer. They've both stuck to their guns. The difficulty for Labour is they're different guns. I think that, I mean, I'm quite glad as a Brexiteer that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't given in to pushes for a second referendum pledge and took the Labour Party into the 2017 referendum with a commitment to follow through and deliver on Brexit. But I think history will look back and say Theresa May in many ways had it rather easy with Jeremy Corbyn facing her, rather than perhaps anyone else who could have appeared across the dispatch box who could have drawn Labour together. That's me looking at it party politically. As I say, I'm glad for the future of our country and the future of our relations with the EU that he has done what he has done. But I think we've been so obsessed with divisions in the Conservative Party in recent years. I think historians may look back and think rather more about the divisions within Labour.
Let's look ahead now to where we go next, the million-dollar question. But in the immediate term, vote next week. Is that going to happen, Scarlett?
Theresa May's really good at saying we're going to have a vote and then making sure that we don't. I mean, you know, she seems to only want to go to the House of Commons when she thinks she can get something through. I think a lot depends on her response to Jeremy Corbyn's letter, to Jeremy Corbyn saying, I will come with you if you'll do a customs union and various other small other things. And so whether she's brave enough to then go to the Commons where she doesn't quite know what's going to happen, I'm not sure. Because I mean, she's hoping for some, you know, 11th hour deal, 1 minute to midnight deal that is going to solve all her problems, and the Europeans are not going to do it. So we have no idea whether she's going to bite the bullet next week or not.
Yeah, I agree with some of what Scarlett's just said. I certainly agree that the Prime Minister is the past master of the delaying tactic and the pushing things on until as late as possible. And it is clear that our Prime Minister hopes that the discussion will be a binary one in the Commons, her deal or no deal at all. So we agree with that. I think that the news that the Chief Whip has indicated to Cabinet that we won't be having a vote in Parliament next week. Of course, Cabinet now leaks like a sieve on how conversations happen within it. The Chief Whip has indicated we won't have a vote next week. It'll be the week after that. That just goes to support the thesis that we're going to delay this as long as possible and offer the House of Commons really with a gun to its head. It's the Prime Minister's deal, no matter how imperfect you may think it may be, or no deal, which most of you have been shouting the odds about and saying is terrible. Many of us outside of the Commons might say it's not quite as bad as all that, but given that you've been saying no deal is so terrible, surely you'd prefer the Prime Minister's deal to having nothing at all.
OK, we are out of time. I'm sorry, Scarlett. I can see you want to come in there, but we've run out of time. Scarlett Maguire, Alex Deane, thank you both very much for your thoughts this afternoon.